Welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, and if you're new here, I make videos about coffee. Today, I'm reviewing the Acaia Pearl S Smart Scale. So before you get any further into this video, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below about if you think luxury coffee products should be a thing. Now yes, I know that in the past I made a video about this. This is the $12 pocket-sized scale that I use for espresso. Where really half that video is mostly a rant against purchasing a scale like the Acaia Lunar, which retails for $250, or 20 times more than this one. So despite my initial video arguing against this luxury product, I decided it was only fair to give Acaia a chance and do a proper review with one of their scales. But instead of purchasing the Lunar, I decided to try out this one instead, which is the Pearl S. And a quick disclaimer, this video is not sponsored. So why did I decide to try out this scale and pick it up for a whopping $185 instead of the Lunar? Well, here's my initial thoughts going into this review. This is branded as a pour-over scale, and unlike espresso, replicating perfectly brewed pour-overs is a lot more challenging since there are a wider variety of factors that can influence your final cup, especially with regards to your pouring method. So when it comes to smart capabilities, I felt that the realm of pour-over coffee had more to gain from some of the smart functions and features on this scale. But don't worry, later on in this video, I will also test this scale for espresso. So with that being said, let's get into this review. So inside the box, we get a get started guide, stickers, a micro USB cable for charging, a heat resistant coaster, and of course, the scale itself. Okay, so moving on to the build quality. The scale itself measures a 16 by 16 centimeter square and it's 3.2 centimeters tall. The scale feels fairly hefty and weighs 620 grams. It features a 2200 mAh battery that's micro USB rechargeable, and it advertises a 16 to 40 hour use, as well as Bluetooth 4.0 capabilities. With regards to the build quality, honestly, at first glance I thought the surface might have been glass, but it's actually just a glossy black plastic, which also means that it's quite a fingerprint magnet. The display here uses a dot matrix LED, and it's very visible even in very bright lighting conditions, and as far as food scales go, the quality is pretty good. But for the near $200 price tag, I would have liked to see some more premium materials used like metal or glass, although for a commercial working environment, I can see why this durable plastic was used instead. So to truly test out how well this scale performs, I bought a set of calibration weights, weighing anywhere from 1 and up to 20 grams. Acaia does advertise a minimum capacity and readability of 0.1 grams, so if true, it should handle this test with no issues. As a comparison, I'm also going to be showing you the side-by-side with the $12 espresso scale that I use, just to see how well that can perform in the same test. So from this little test, honestly I was a little bit more surprised at how well the cheap $12 scale was performing side by side with the Pearl S. It was able to read every weight accurately, no matter the placement on the scale, and was just a tad slower compared to the Pearl. So the Pearl S is full of different features. It has a number of different modes, including a flow rate mode, which shows you your flow rate in grams per second as you pour, a flow rate practice mode, which is essentially the same thing, just without the timer portion of it, I guess just to practice your pouring speed, a pour over auto start mode, which essentially just starts the timer as you begin pouring, and brew guide mode, which I'll get into a little bit later. The scale also features an Espresso Mode and portafilter mode, which I'll also come back to in a sec. So after having used and tested the scale for about a week now, here are some of my thoughts about each of the different modes. Flow rate mode is great, and I like being able to see it as I pour, but it doesn't auto start the timer like the auto start timer mode, and I wish they had a mode which combined both. Flow rate practice mode is completely redundant, as flow rate mode itself does essentially the same thing. Auto start mode is great, but it's not really essential or a smart feature because you really could just press start as soon as you start pouring. Like mentioned before, I would have liked to see this specifically combined with the flow rate mode feature. And finally, brew guide mode. If you are going to pick up an Acaia Pearl S, this should be the reason. I thought this was a very cool feature. It lets you download different brew guides from the Brew Guide app and replicate them with the scale. It shows you the step-by-step instructions on the scale, and it was a pretty fun way of trying out the different guided pour-over recipes without really having to refer to an external device or worry about timing. So now let's talk about the app. I'm not a fan of the app integration. One of my biggest complaints is that there isn't just a single app, there are like 5. With one being available exclusively on iPad, although to be fair, I think that one was designed for the commercial environment. Now, personally, I just don't understand why not all of the features could have been streamlined into a single, well-designed app with a nice user interface. For the most part, I found myself using 3 apps: Brewmaster, Brew Guide, and the Updater app. So the Updater app is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a way to update your scales software. The Brewmaster app was the one that was actually pretty fun to use, allowing you to log details of your own pours, creating a graph out of it, which you can also then choose to replicate in the future. The Brew Guide app is also very fun to use. I was able to download others' recipes, and having the scale itself guide you through pouring it with step-by-step instructions, including all the timings and weights, was pretty neat. The apps are all a little bit clunky and could definitely use a nice facelift and an updated UI, but for the most part, they do work. Also, let me know in the comments if you'd want to see a full step-by-step guide on how to use the different app features. So, let's talk about this scale for espresso. I've said this before, but I still don't think that espresso warrants the need of a smart scale. The Pearl S does have an espresso mode and a portafilter mode. Portafilter mode isn't too necessary since I single dose at home, but I do see its uses in a commercial environment. You basically put the portafilter on the scale, it auto tears that weight, and then you can grind directly into the portafilter and weigh it again. Again, for at-home use, just hit tear, it's not a big deal. And espresso mode, which works by auto tearing the cup, auto starting when it detects a flow, and auto stopping when the flow stops. So I said this in my video about the cheap $12 espresso scale that I use, but that is not a feature I'm going to be utilizing because the time between starting your machine and first drip also varies. Now, some might argue that you don't need to record the time, but in my opinion, because it varies and consistency is so important, starting the time when I start the machine is also important. So having the scale start on first drip rather than when you start the machine itself is not going to give you a consistent experience. Another issue with this scale specifically for espresso is that it's absolutely enormous. It barely fits underneath the group head of my Rocket and my Gotcha Classic Pro. Okay, so final thoughts. Is it worth it? Is the Acaia Pearl S worth $185? Well, I think yes. But wait, don't go and purchase one just yet. There are a few things you should keep in mind before you make a purchasing decision. First, will this improve your coffee? Will you feel the benefits of actually being able to replicate your pours precisely down to the gram and second? Second, can you discern or perceive subtle nuances in taste? I think a tool like this actually helps with that. You can pour 2 different pour-over methods following the brew guides for each of them, and then try and taste them side by side to really pick out the differences. And third, can you afford it? This is absolutely a nice-to-have item and not a need-to-have item. Also try to remember that this was originally designed for a commercial environment. Personally, I'm a relatively tech-savvy person, so I do welcome the ability to log brews, replicate brews, and try out other methods with a step-by-step guide integrated directly into the scale in a very nice and clean way. So I would say that for those that actually don't want to deal with the extra layers of technology or fiddle around with an app on their phone prior to brewing coffee, then you shouldn't get a scale like this. Just get some generic, normal kitchen scale with a timer. So that is it for this review. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I want to know if you guys think that this scale is suitable for home use or if it might be a little bit overkill. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.